Welcome to FTB Weekends for the 14th of January 2023. It is currently 1:06 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are I'm Jason C. McLean. And welcome, as always, Dawn McSweeney. Hey, Dawn.
Hello.
And we have a special guest this time. We have Andrew Jamieson. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Now, the reason why you're here and why we're all here is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I wanted to do a whole episode talking about wrestling, talking about the WWE. We're not a wrestling. Yeah, yes, that's what we call it, Don. Wrestling. That's wrestling. But the thing is, this time Don understands even that we have to do it because it's for a sad reason though. It's because Vince McMahon forced his way back into the company. Stephanie McMahon resigned. There was a rumor of a sale to Saudi Arabia, which fortunately isn't going to happen. I'll put this
in context into why this matters for your regular viewer who doesn't care about wrestling. Vince McMahon was literally last year, he was settling rape allegations out of court while more rape allegations were coming up. So this is not the guy you currently want in to be the face of your anything. So it's kind of wild that he's suddenly uncanceled enough to be back. Continue.
Well, he uncanceled himself actually, and it was actually there were charges of rape, but there's also most of them were charges of like paying hush money to a consenting mistress. That was just to clarify.
Yeah, the investigation itself only spans 2 of his many years, which is also haunting in itself for what they found in those 2 years and how long he'd been in control. But it was mostly hush money payments. There were rape charges weren't laid, but a complaint was made about him raping other women before, but that wasn't part of this investigation. So he was forced to resign because of just those 2 years though.
Because of just hush money, not rape, in a few years that they looked at. Yeah. Okay, I'm following.
And he should have declared it properly on the company books. Apparently, that was the
well, that's how they found out, basically.
Like, make sure when you're paying hush money, you put it in accounting. I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Or cash.
But so how he came back though is that he basically had they have like the Class A shares, which are the ones you make money off of because it's a publicly traded company, and the Class B shares, he owns over 80% of the voting rights. So basically he said, unless you allow me back, I'm not going to renew any TV deals or any like rights deals or anything like that. So basically he's like, look, either you lose all of your television and you're screwed or you let me back. So
which is incredibly arrogant in itself, because while Vince McMahon, can be thanked for what he's done, the idea that only he can negotiate new media deals it's absurd,
Yeah. But that's how he set up the company. I guess when he decided, he knew that something like this might happen someday. It was 20 years ago when they went public. But
pause, you guys are really inside baseball. Let me just say, he's the creator of it. He's the face of it for years. He wrote himself into, aside from being the actual president and behind the scenes guy, wrote himself into a plot line for decades. And then his daughter was a whole plot line situation. And then when he left, she took over. So then when he came back, she had to release a statement that was like, oh, well, thankfully it's in good hands now and I'm going to leave, which sounds like it was under duress.
That's actually where I wanted to almost start with was Stephanie's resigning and the timing with that and the investigation, because there was 3 weeks basically between the investigation starting, the internal investigation with this hush money starting, and Stephanie stepping back from the company. She claimed
the first time
and she claimed it was for family, to spend more time with her family. But it was 3 weeks from that investigation starting to this, right? And I recently heard a rumor, but it was from Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer being
he always got to take Dave with a grain of salt, but
he also he gets in there. Too many people talk to him. But I heard there was a Nick Khan, current CEO. He was co-CEO with Stephanie, current CEO now, sole CEO.
Not to be confused with Tony Khan, who owns AEW. Just
right. But Nick Khan is apparently acting as a go-between between Vince and Trips and Vince and Stephanie, as in they're not speaking at all.
So you're telling
Oh,
me
wow.
Junkyard Dog isn't involved in this story at
No,
all?
okay. Just this way, Trips. When we say Trips, to clarify, Don, the Trips is Triple H or Paul Levesque's real name.
Okay, because then
Yeah.
okay, for the average listener, because I did just a little bit of research, there was a plot line where Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, for those who were that before, and so then he's just been there forever now, and then from the that whole thing, and then
Yes, yeah.
not for you, Jason, of course you
Yeah.
know, but they so then they did a plot line whereby Stephanie McMahon and him were together, but then him and Stephanie McMahon really got together and
Yeah.
genuinely got married. So this whole family business started to get really meta, boys, and they
Vince
started
McMahon
to
has
actually
a terrifying ability to write something and then it happens. He's like Stephen King,
Yeah, yeah.
Or he's what Stephen King wishes he was, in fact.
Yes, yes. But yeah, so Triple H or Paul Levesque, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H became when Vince, he was sort of on like sick leave too. When Vince was had to resign, Stephanie came in as CEO and Triple H, Paul Levesque became head of creative. And honestly,
Which was,
that's
after
What year
stepping
was
back,
that?
So he was
this year,
July of this year.
And honestly, the creative got
last
really good this year. And I'm just like, okay, aside from the fact that you don't want someone who's like with like sexual assault, all that stuff, running organization. I also really like the creative that Triple H has been doing. And I hope like, I mean, yeah, like, and now.
So that actually, the creative with Triple H, I mentioned to you last night, Triple H addressed before Friday Night SmackDown,
Yes.
he addressed the talent. And it's a brief statement he made to the talent. It was a bit of an assurance. I'll read a part of it, but the language here is actually what me as a more than I should be invested fan makes me worry about Vince McMahon's orbit around creative. Because Triple H stated nothing has changed regarding the creative process he has been using since he took over last summer. He reportedly admitted, though, that anything could change. But at the moment, McMahon still defers to him for final creative decisions. The language there insinuates that the absolute control is in McMahon's hands. We all know it. But
and he's choosing not to exert it. He's choosing
Yeah.
not to.
That I thought that was very telling.
Is he
But
crazy or just a bad person? Like, did he write himself into his own delusions because of his plotline?
Well, no, it wasn't his idea to write himself into his own delusions. Because actually, this is a funny story. He basically really screwed over a wrestler, Bret Hart, at the show you saw, the Montreal screw job. You were there. He basically
Paying enough attention.
Yeah,
There were fireworks.
He changed the script on the guy. He didn't tell the guy he was going to lose, and he basically screwed him over. And people started booing him. He did this whole thing saying like Brett screwed Brett, thought he'd be the big hero, and they're like, "No, everyone hates you. Hey, why don't you play the bad guy?" He's like, "Okay, I'll do that." And he became the best villain of like the Attitude Era, like the best heel, which is what we call the bad guys in wrestling, the best heel of the Attitude Era. But he's now becoming a bit of a we're seeing he's a bit of a heel in real life. And I guess, like, honestly, one thing I guess but Andrew and I, we're both going to, we're going to SmackDown, which is coming to Montreal, which sort of links this to Montreal. It's going to be the Undertaker One Dead Man show on Thursday, SmackDown on Friday, and then Elimination Chamber on Saturday at the Bell Center. And wow, like I'm looking forward to it. I was so happy to do it with this creative, but at least one thing last night, SmackDown didn't feel, at least they're not touching on this at all. At least Vince didn't come out at the beginning of the show.
No,
at least
again, that's what I was worried about. I was like,
I'm worried about that.
Right? Is he going to come out? I mean, I worried about the investment of the tickets at SmackDown as soon as I heard Vince was coming back. I was like, will there be a company by this point? Because that man looks like he's in a mode for destruction at this.
Well, one of the top buyers, there was a rumor they already sold their in principle to the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, which the only reason why that would, huge rumor, but the only reason why that would maybe be a possibility is because, okay, the biggest bidders, the most logical ones are like Comcast, which owns NBC Universal, Disney, I think Warner, like some
any of the conglomerates, any of the media conglomerates, they
a small group of
to do it.
Nick Khan and The Rock and a few people coming together as a small group. But the thing is, like, they would probably ask for pay a reasonable price, and like they wouldn't have to pay all the rights fees, so they might not mind paying a bit more. They also might not want Vince to stay in charge. Whereas I'm sure the Saudis would be like, here's
Go
$6
for it.
billion and you can stay in charge, because they're desperate to have something for branding. And that's one of the reasons why he might take it. Like,
Okay, but
I
wait.
think.
Okay.
Go ahead, Don.
Okay, I was gonna say that the thing is, because I'm from old school wrestling, like when there was a Saturday morning cartoon and coloring books. Lou Albano was famous. Anyway, the point here is that he's been in charge. Like, wasn't Vince McMahon was always in charge of it, right?
No. Long story short, the company actually started in 52 with his grandfather, Roderick Jesse McMahon. And then it was passed on, became the Worldwide Wrestling Federation
Yes.
with Vincent S. McMahon. I can't remember his middle name. And then he eventually passed it on to his son, who he never wanted in the wrestling business.
he didn't
and
pass
that's
it.
Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
To clarify, he
took it
didn't.
over.
Yeah, he didn't pass
pushed
it on.
his own father out.
Yeah,
So
he
what
basically.
what
because
year
basically,
was-
this was the 80s. This and basically
Yeah.
is basically what Vince did. What Vince Jr. did is he basically, his dad didn't want him. His dad abandoned him when he was a kid, and he was raised by his mother and a bunch of like abusive like stepfathers, until eventually he left and decided to find his real father, who was a wrestling promoter in New York. And his dad accepted him into the company. He's like, fine. He's like, you cannot be a wrestler. Okay, fine. Eventually you could be an announcer. And
This
then
is so
eventually
deep.
Yeah,
I
he
had
got
no
some,
idea.
he got some people together. He decided to take over the company. He didn't tell them what he was going to do, because wrestling was very territorial at the time. And what he started doing was taping his matches and airing them on TV stations in other markets, and basically trying to take over all of instead of just the territories, the expanding from New York to take over and basically put all these territories out of business, made it a national brand and then an international brand. So yeah, he did really create modern wrestling until
Wait,
Turner
so he's
tried-
got
yeah,
his
like,
dad's name, so that's why I thought he's been in charge of the world forever. So
no.
okay, so like, what are we talking? He came in and like broke up the Rockers, or he came in and like created Triple H? Like, what year?
Vince came in, and after he took over the territories, he started working with Dick Ebersol at NBC, which is where the
early
WWE
80s
network now sits on Peacock, NBC streaming service. So Dick Ebersol, who was behind Saturday Night Live, came on to produce Saturday Night Main Event with Vince McMahon, and he showed Vince McMahon what wrestling could be on television, which is what led to where we are now. But it also
Hulk Hogan too, other people. Like
Okay,
the big
so
stars.
everything I remember myself is Vince Jr.'s doing.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
If you watched it, it's Vince. Yeah.
When it comes to the sale, though, I've been thinking a lot of which direction it could go in, because there is a laundry list of potential buyers, right? But I think what it absolutely depends on isn't like the who it's sold to, depends on how it's being sold and why. As in, think back to Ted Turner, the infamous conversation. Ted Turner calls Vince. He says, "Vince, looks like we're in the same business." And Vince says, "I don't think so, Ted. You're in the wrestling business and I'm in the entertainment business." Right? And then he went on to, but he bought the AWA, shut it down.
Yeah.
He bought their library. He bought WCW. He paid nearly as much for the brand and the logos as he did for their video library.
That's what he wanted.
Them down. That's all he's ever wanted. So if it could go one way in terms of like a sporting way, if it's sold as a wrestling company, but it will go a completely different way if it's sold as what it seems Vince really sees it as, is a content farm, right? It is a juggernaut that has no comparable organization around it, right? No studio, no film studio, no Warner Brothers, nothing like this, right?
Yeah.
And it's just pure content. Like, I've got the WWE network. There's endless. I could never leave the house, and I still won't watch everything, And that's all they'll keep doing, is producing content, so that you could see a private investment firm or a public investment firm dipping their hands into the WWE.
Well, one of the rumored buyers is, I think this is probably pie in the sky, would be the other cons, Shad and Tony Khan, who from AEW. Yes, AEW's doing a lot worse than WWE, but they also own the Jacksonville Jaguars, which makes a ton of money, so they have the money potentially to buy it.
What's AEW?
All Elite Wrestling. It's a competitor of WWE.
Yeah, WWE's biggest television competitor right now. But that's if McMahon sees it as a wrestling company. You know, he could sell
Yeah.
it to them who own a wrestling company, but I don't think he's seen it as a wrestling company for a very long time.
But
I
if he
mean,
sells it to like Disney, couldn't they just theoretically ruin it because they're not Vince McMahon and they're trying to do something that suits what they think people want that isn't really what people want?
I think Disney, keep in mind, Disney isn't just, everyone thinks Mickey Mouse. I mean, yes, and to quote, I think Jim Cornette came
No,
up
I
with
think
this.
Star Wars too.
Yeah. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
No, but wouldn't you like to take, to quote Jim Cornette, I think, wouldn't you like to take the Undertaker's last ride at Disney World?
No.
Like,
Absolutely.
but okay, no.
Absolutely.
Everyone thinks the Mickey Mouse, but they also own ESPN. They would probably run WWE through ESPN. So that's probably how they would, if they owned it,
But
they wouldn't put it under their Disney, their Star Wars brand. They put it under like
I think
ESPN.
they would treat it like a content farm again, though, because I mean, I had this daydream the other day about like what the Saudis would do, and I don't think, like, if you look at the amount of money the WWE makes in terms of media sales and merch compared to their live ticket sales, it's not comparable anymore. It's not even close, right? You could see if like an investment firm took over. It's all about the network. It's all about the content, the shows that we can put them in, the movies we can make, the merchandising. And then what Raw and SmackDown just end up being at a larger version of the Capitol Wrestling Center weekly. It's always in the same place. Our live events don't really matter. It's all about the premium live events and the Saudi Arabian shows. And that's really,
well, let's hope that doesn't happen, because there's a live event that does matter, which is the one SmackDown. I guess we'll do a little, just a little cyber, a little fun thing. Any surprise Royal Rumble entrant predictions?
Vince McMahon.
Oh God, I hope not. Besides, they've been smart. They've been smart to keep this out. I'm thinking maybe he's Uncle Howdy. It was me, Wyatt. It was me all along.
Wow. I've been hoping that Uncle Howdy is Ronda Rousey, to be honest.
Really?
Repackage her. She's so much more charming with a mask on.
Yeah, I know. She's really disappointing. Like, she used to be so great. And honestly, I know that the bloodline's going to break up. I know, I could see it happening. Like last night with Sammy not being. Finally, I love them. I love Sammy Uso. I love him.
No.
But I know something's going to happen at Montreal. Something's because that's where he's from. He's from here, right? So something. He's also one of the talent.
The main event last night, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. If that was at the Bell Center, you wouldn't be able to hear. You know, you
a guy from Montreal. Yeah, the main event of SmackDown last night with Dawn was a guy from Montreal and a guy from Laval.
Yeah, best friends for 15, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, fighting
That's
each other.
wild.
Yeah.
So come check that out. This has been I really love. I mean, it's unfortunately
Next time, can we do a reality show of my choosing, guys? Can we? Okay, go on.
I used to call it like watching my stories. All right, so so follow. You can buy your tickets for Undertaker's. Why not do the plug for Undertaker One Dead Man Show at Olympia, SmackDown and Elimination Chamber through I think through Ticketmaster, Eventco. The Olympia one, you have to get it at the Olympia box office. You can follow. Andrew, who the fuck is AndrewJamieson.com and. Not Andrew. What's the
Fake Jamieson on Instagram?
Fake Jamieson on Instagram. I'm going to put that down there. Dawn McSweeney at McMoxie on Twitter and Instagram. Me at Jason C. McLean on Twitter and Instagram. Forget the Box on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, we have an Android app. We have daily content. And you can, if you're watching this on Facebook, like the video at Forget the Box on YouTube, smash that like button, follow us for some non-wrestling content, but maybe some other wrestling content too. Ring the bell for notifications. And of course, we're going to be, again, for daily content, you can check out forgetthebox.net, and we'll catch you next week for another FTB Weekend.